Right now on Morning News Now, a staffing shakeup at the White House. This morning, Mike Waltz is out as National Security Advisor, weeks after that group chat scandal involving sensitive military plans inadvertently shared with a journalist.
I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador.
He's the first person to lead. He will certainly not be the last.
Plus, the president pushing forward in the trade war with steep auto tariffs set to take effect tomorrow. And a federal judge rejecting the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act in deportations. We have team coverage. Developing this morning, parts of the South underwater after days of torrential downpours. Now, several states bracing for more severe weather through the weekend. We're tracking the conditions and the areas still at risk. Also, turbulence on the tarmac at one of the country's busiest airports. Passengers left stranded after hours-long delays. Now, new concerns about a nationwide shortage of air traffic controllers. What travelers need to know. And get your popcorn ready. It's Friday. There's no shortage of new movies and shows to watch this weekend. We will get a sneak peek of what you just can't miss. I love it. It always informs my weekend viewing.
I've already got so many shows that I'm watching. I don't know if I can add any more.
Oh, good. I need to know your list. Also, I feel like my homework this weekend is watching Conclave.
Oh,
because I still haven't seen it.
That's a good one.
You know, so. But we're going to tell you if you've already seen that, what else you should watch.
All right. Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started this morning at the White House, where the Trump administration is downplaying the first major shakeup to the president's staff. Mike Waltz is stepping aside as National Security Advisor. The administration says he'll instead be nominated as ambassador to the UN. It comes more than a month after Waltz was embroiled in that leak of U.S. military plans known as Signalgate. Now, Signal is that chat app where a journalist was accidentally added to a conversation discussing sensitive military plans. Well, Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News yesterday the move wasn't a firing and could even be seen as a promotion.
Donald Trump has fired a lot of people. He doesn't give them Senate-confirmed appointments afterwards. If the president wanted to fire him over the Signal thing, which, by the way, was a total nothing burger of a story, he would have just done it. But he actually decided it's better for Mike to be in this new role. He's given Mike the new role. That's it.
In addition to his current job, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as interim national security advisor.
On another front, the president's immigration crackdown is facing new pushback in court. A federal judge in Texas yesterday rejected the administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged gang members to El Salvador. That judge was appointed by Trump. There are also signs of a potential thaw in the president's trade war with China. Beijing says it's evaluating an offer from the White House to discuss those crippling tariffs which have rattled global markets. Tariffs and immigration, those are two of the issues that motivated thousands of people to demonstrate yesterday. Crowds took to the streets to express support for labor unions and to protest the president's policies on International Workers' Day, also known as May Day. We have full team coverage on all this. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley is standing by with more on immigration. Our business and data correspondent Brian Chung is at a car dealership with an update on those tariffs. First, let's go to NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard with the latest from Washington. Vaughn, good morning. Let's start right there with Mike Waltz. This debacle with the Signal group chat happened more than a month ago. That's when that journalist was accidentally added to a group chat with top Trump officials who were discussing airstrikes on Yemen. So why now? Why is the president reassigning Mike Waltz now?
Right. We know that the Signal chat saga rankled the president because it enveloped not only his vice president, but his chief of staff, his Pentagon Secretary, Pete Hegseth. Effectively, all top leadership in his White House but him were on this message and shared with The Atlantic, which published those messages. And not only serious questions over the national security implications of Mike Waltz, but also his response in the aftermath of it, not taking total ownership of it, suggesting that somehow the contact information for the reporter who the president has long loathed somehow was, quote, sucked into his phone unknowingly. So there were serious questions. But at this moment in time, just 3 months into the administration, this is notable. Yet another national security advisor coming off of the first administration when he went through 4 national security advisors. This is a president who had turned to the former Green Beret, former Florida congressman, somebody who is widely respected across national security circles and is now moving on from him, though nominating him to go before the Senate to be confirmed as the nominee for the ambassador of the United Nations.
Vaughn, switching gears, there are growing signs that Elon Musk may be on his way out of Washington soon. He's told reporters he's going to be working on government projects only 1 or 2 days a week now. What do we know at this point about the future of Doge and his place in it?
Right. This comes just days after the earnings came out for Tesla, in which they saw steep declines in their market value. This, for Elon Musk, is him acknowledging that he intends to go back and focus on his companies. He says that he will return to Washington about every other week and will work on Doge-related projects, as he described it, 1 to 2 days a week. Those young millennial staffers that he has harnessed to ultimately actually implement across the federal agencies and departments Doge's cost-cutting efforts, they will stay on board, to our understanding. It's not clear who is exactly going to lead. Last night on Fox, Elon Musk talking about his move to pivot, but also the apparatus that he had built and intends to have stay around here in D.C. Take a listen.
It's a long-term enterprise because if we take our eye off the ball, the waste and fraud will come roaring back.
They can doge when Democrats get back in power.
Yeah, we're trying to have it be such that the funding is removed, so the grants are gone. So there's a lot of work required to restart the waste and fraud, and that will at least slow it down.
Now, Elon Musk over the last 3 months has made a lot of inaccurate claims about how federal money has been spent, suggesting that there are thousands of dead people that are getting Social Security checks when there's no indication that that is reality. He also promised a week before the election at that major Madison Square Garden rally of then candidate Trump's to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget annually. He has announced only $180 billion worth of cuts. And again, a lot of scrutiny, especially among Democrats on Capitol Hill, about those cost-cutting efforts that Elon Musk has gone about.
Vaughn, another big headline here. We learned about an executive order the president signed late last night. It aims to end federal funding for the public broadcasters, NPR and PBS. What reasons is the administration giving for this, and just how much could this hurt these two longtime institutions?
Right. Let's be clear. This is, again, a part of the long laundry list of items that then candidate Trump and now President Trump wanted to go and ultimately execute on upon taking the White House. Going slashing the federal funding of PBS and NPR was one of those goals. Now, to be clear, about 10% of NPR's funding comes from direct or indirect federal funding, and about 15% of PBS's comes from federal government funding. And so far from a great majority. At the same time, PBS and NPR, they're set up as their own independent news organizations to be free of corporate oversight, and that has long been the intention of both of these organizations. The president overnight signing this executive order, which we should also note as part of this executive order, there is going to be likely court challenges because that federal funding that goes to NPR and PBS annually is appropriated by Congress. And as we have seen in other cost slashing efforts from this White House, the courts have intervened because it has been long-standing view of the courts that it is not the prerogative of the executive branch to decide whether or not congressionally appropriated funds are spent or not.
Vaughn, before we let you go, what do we know about the software China says it received from the White House to try to start trade negotiations?
Right. This is a development. China has said that repeatedly said that there are no talks between the two sides, despite the Trump administration trying to suggest publicly that there are direct negotiations. But just yesterday, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for China writing in a statement that they are open to engaging in dialogue with the United States about trade negotiations. At the same time, ordering the U.S. to pull back its 145% tariffs that they have put on Chinese goods coming into the United States, creating an effective embargo. China writing in part here in a statement in response to the Trump administration, quoted, "The U.S. wants to talk. It should slow its sincerity it should show its sincerity and be prepared to correct its wrong practices and cancel the unilateral tariffs." Exactly whether the U.S. will be willing to pull back on those 145% tariffs is the question that the White House now must respond to. Guys.
All right. Vaughn Hilliard in a very energetic fly reporting from Washington this morning. Vaughn, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Let's stay on trade. A 25% U.S. tariff on auto parts that's set to take effect tomorrow. It comes after President Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday easing auto tariffs for domestic car producers. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is at a Subaru dealership in Lakewood, New Jersey with more on this. Brian, good morning. Great to see you. Walk us through what exactly these incoming auto tariffs are and how they're going to work.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Savannah. It's been difficult to track because there have been so many updates on the tariffs. And when it comes to the automotive tariffs, yes, the 25% tariff on the finished automotive products have been in place for about a month. But tonight, effective at midnight, car parts will now be tariffed at 25%. And even despite the announcement that we got from the White House earlier this week that there would be some blunting of the impact of those tariffs, the 25% tariffs on those parts will still take effect. It's just now the case that the automotive companies that will be buying those products will be able in some cases to get a rebate for those increased costs, which they hope will help some of those U.S. automakers, go through the impact of those tariffs without having to pass the costs on to customers. Remains to be seen whether or not that will be the case. But again, when you think about the impact of higher cost parts for automotive products, that's not only going to make, in some cases, new car products more expensive, but also even those that are existing, car owners potentially raise the cost on them as well. If you have to get a replacement, if you have to come in and bring your automotive product for, repair at the shop, well, that can make it more expensive for you as well, again, to the magnitude of 25%. So even though we did have the announcement earlier this week, again, a pretty big and impactful tariff that will be taking effect midnight tonight of 25% on auto parts.
So, Brian, what all could this just mean for both domestic and for foreign car companies?
Yeah, well, one of the estimates that we got came from Anderson Economic Group. This is a Michigan-based group that looks at the impact of these tariffs to your bottom line, consumers that could be in the market for a new car. And they projected that the cost of a new car could still be as much as $2,000 to $12,000 more expensive, depending on what you're buying. $12,000 for kind of those larger SUVs that do come from abroad. But they said even domestically made vehicles that are assembled here in the United States could still see costs go up by $2,000 even after the revisions to the auto tariffs that were announced by the administration earlier this week. So, yes, that is a little bit lower than, say, the $3,000, in some cases $4,500 impact they were expecting for those mid-sized, smaller sedans prior to the adjustments to the policies earlier this week. But again, for consumers that could be in the market for a new vehicle, it could still be thousands of dollars more expensive. Now, here at this, a Subaru dealership, the Pine Belt Subaru here in Lakewood, New Jersey, I was speaking to some of those that work here, the manager telling me that, yes, they haven't had to raise prices quite yet, but effective May 3rd, they're worried that the manufacturers that make these vehicles could then increase the cost on dealers, which would then start the pressure on them to have to raise costs on consumers. Not happening yet, but it's also coming at a time where inventory could be shrinking. Fewer vehicles are just arriving at the ports to come to lots like these over here at this dealership, which means that there could be fewer choices as well as those price pressures coming depending on how prolonged these tariffs are.
Brian, if you're an existing car owner, what do you want to know about these tariffs?
Yeah, well, look, the car parts tariffs would be more impactful for you because, again, if you weren't in the market for a new car, then you didn't have to face the 25% tariff on the finished automotive products that have been in place for about a month or so. Now, the issue is that with car parts now effective to get more expensive midnight tonight, well, that's going to be an issue because, again, we're not the ones that are getting the rebate. It's the auto manufacturers that are buying those parts. So those costs could end up falling on Americans. Guys.
Brian Chung, thank you very much.
The Trump administration is continuing to face pushback in the courts over its deportation of migrants to El Salvador. A federal judge ruled the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans that it says are gang members is illegal.
Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr., a Trump appointee, said in an opinion on Thursday that the White House improperly expanded the meaning of the law, which is meant for use during military invasion. The ruling marks the first time a judge weighed in on the merits of Trump's use of this 18th century act for deportations.
NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us from Washington with more on this. So, Ryan, tell us more about why the judge is rejecting the president's use of the Alien Enemies Act in his district, but not deportation by other means.
Yeah, so this is, again, a Trump-appointed judge who made this ruling, and basically saying that, he cannot restrict the executive from using the normal means to get people out of the country, right, that through the normal immigration process. But it's this invocation of this Alien Enemies Act, this ruling from 1798. You see on the screen there, the historical record renders clear that the president's invocation of the AEA through the proclamation exceeds the scope of the statute and is contrary to the plain, ordinary meaning of the statute's terms. So basically saying that the powers that are written into that law, meaning this wartime usually process that has only been used before, during the War of 1812, during World War II, and it was invoked the day before, or the day after, rather, the attack on Pearl Harbor. That's the usual metric that this is brought about. Congress did not intend for this to be this widespread way for the executive to overrule all of the functions of due process that are typical in the United States of America. So this is basically saying you have to go through that normal procedure rather than invoke the Alien Enemies Act. That actually doesn't mean that these individuals can't be sent out of the country. It just means that you have to go through that normal process rather than sort of expedite this and sort of get rid of that due process altogether.
So, Ryan, does this mean anything for the immigrants who have already been deported under the Alien Enemies Act?
This ruling, not in particular, but of course there's ongoing litigation about that. And what the Supreme Court has said is that they need the executive, meaning Donald Trump, needs to take these efforts to bring Abrego Garcia, for example, back to the country. So some of this is still playing out in court. But what this finds is that, at least in the context of this particular group of individuals, this Venezuelan gang, that this was unconstitutional. This was not properly brought forward. So that's going to certainly stop it in that district, but it's not going to stop it beyond that. But that is a major place where a lot of these deportations were happening from, that southern district of Texas where this ruling came from.
Ryan, you mentioned Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Just yesterday, a judge presiding over the case rejected the government's request to keep delaying the proceedings. So what happens next?
Yeah, so there is a deadline later today involving some of the responses from the plaintiffs here. What they're sort of supposed to narrow the scope of what they are requesting from the government here. But there's just this huge gap between what the administration is saying, in public, and what Donald Trump in particular is saying in public, and sort of what's happening and what the courts have ordered here. They're trying essentially to slow roll this process, it seems like, through the Justice Department and the litigators there. And there's been efforts to sort of keep that behind the scenes and sort of keep that sealed. But the courts have sent a pretty strong message that the executive is supposed to try to use their best efforts to get back Abrego Garcia from El Salvador, since he was, in the administration's own words, mistakenly sent there.
All right. Ryan Riley, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, this morning we are tracking dangerous storms that seem to have spent all week sweeping across the country. More than 30 million Americans from Texas to New York are bracing for the possibility of a weekend of severe weather. NBC News correspondent Adrian Broaddus has the details.
Days of torrential rainfall and severe storms across the South, turning deadly. Authorities say raging floodwaters killed at least 2 people in Oklahoma on Wednesday. One of the victims swept off a roadway, according to the Potawatomi Sheriff's Office. A deputy trying to save him, also swept away, needed to be rescued. The Oklahoma Department of Public Safety also saying an 86-year-old was swept away in her vehicle. Some residents forced to evacuate as the floodwaters rose. Powerful thunderstorms and hail pummeling neighboring Texas. Some parts completely overrun by floodwaters. More than 30 million Americans now under the threat of severe weather. From the Texas Panhandle to Pennsylvania, where at least 4 people are dead after severe storms left a trail of destruction, according to police.
The call volume last night was extraordinary during this storm, almost unprecedented.
On Wednesday, Governor Josh Shapiro declared a state of emergency for the counties surrounding Pittsburgh. That area seeing heavy rains and wind gusts hitting nearly 90 miles per hour, according to the National Weather Service in Pittsburgh, setting power lines ablaze and leaving tens of thousands of people without power. Adrian Broaddus, NBC News.
And with more severe storms expected this weekend, let's get a check on your morning News Now weather.
Angie Lastman's here with us this Friday. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Finishing out our work week, unfortunately, with more of the same. It's been a busy one when it comes to the severe weather, specifically across the middle of the country. And you guessed it, that's where we've got more of that activity this morning. But we're going to see the same kind of storm system work its way to the east in the coming days. And that means unsettled weather for a lot of folks. This morning, we've already seen those thunderstorm watches in effect across parts of Oklahoma and Texas. We've got plenty of flood alerts up as well. I'll show you those in a moment. But the big picture is that today, tonight, we're going to see those kind of intensifying storms, specifically midday and beyond. And that means more of that severe weather potential and the heavy rain that, of course, has led us to some flooding concerns over the past couple of days. Here's the deal for the severe weather today. Stretch from essentially Nashville down to San Antonio. You have that good chance to see some large hail. We're talking 2 inches or larger. We've also got those strong wind gusts on tap, 60 miles per hour or higher, and the potential for a couple of tornadoes across that region. Again, central Texas specifically looks like we'll have the best chance for the hail, but even still stretching all the way up into the Tennessee Valley, we could see some of those stronger storms. That system on the move here as we get through tomorrow, and we kick off our weekend with basically the slow-moving system bringing us a whole lot of moisture. We've got a lot of it to tap into, so the heavy rain is going to be a big potential, especially up across the Northeast. And because of that, along with the severe weather, we'll likely see some of these travel delays, especially as the Saturday goes on and you get into the second half of the day. The severe weather threat is still pretty expansive, but it's not quite as impactful. We're not looking at all of those ingredients to be there for really things like tornadoes and such. That risk is on the low end, but we could still see some hail, maybe some stronger winds up and across parts of the Northeast and stretching down across the Southeast. In the meantime, it's been multiple days of really heavy rain across parts of the Southern Plains, Oklahoma, Texas specifically. We've unfortunately got new rounds of that heavy rain on top of those saturated soils. So no surprise, I don't think it should be to anybody that we've got all these flood alerts in effect specifically for Oklahoma City this morning. More rain on the way for folks there, but we're also going to see anywhere from 4 to 5 inches of rain across parts of isolated parts, I should say, of the Northeast. It's going to be kind of a soggy weekend even as we get through Sunday. Here's a big picture look at your Saturday. If you're looking for the good weather, sunny, mild, it's the middle of the country. They deserve it after a very busy week. We'll keep that going for Sunday as well. It'll be rain on the bookends of the country across parts of the Southwest. We'll see some showers and storms. But guys, the Kentucky Derby, it's on tap. And unfortunately, it looks like the track could be a little rainy. We'll keep an eye on this. We could see some of those showers and thunderstorms and temperatures in the upper 60s. Ooh. I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's the news I have to give.
And you'll be watching with a hat, right?
Yes, I will. You and I both.
That's right. I got to make a hat. All right, on the list.
You look so cute in summary.
Hey, you look like you're going to the Derby.
I know. Look, we didn't even plan this. Look at us with our little
guys, you didn't tell me about
check.
the pastel.
I know. Thanks, Angie.
You got it.
All right, this morning, Newark International Airport is recovering from a tough Thursday. Just weeks before the start of the summer travel season, some passengers were stuck with delays of 5 hours or more. Now the Transportation Secretary is sounding the alarm, saying we are starting to see cracks in the system from decades-old air traffic control technology and staffing shortages. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the details.
At one of America's busiest airports, gridlock. 24 hours of ground stops and delays at Newark International, a critical hub for United. Arriving flights delayed 5 to 12 hours.
All we know that this is an ATC FAA issue.
This red-eye flight from San Francisco to Newark turned around mid-flight. On the West Coast, passengers waiting in long lines.
Yeah, this is rough.
The FAA blames the chaos on equipment issues, runway construction at Newark, and staffing issues at Philadelphia TRACON, which guides aircraft in and out of the airport.
What I think you're seeing is you're starting to see cracks in the system.
American 237.
Still short some 3,000 controllers nationwide, the DOT unveiled plans to staff up within 3 to 4 years, including recruiting more military controllers, bonuses for academy grads and veteran controllers who don't leave before mandatory retirement at 56. One Newark controller tells NBC News they lost radars on Monday, radios on Wednesday, and things need to change. It's not a safe situation for the flying public. The FAA and the ATC union insist air travel is safe.
I think this is a pivotal moment of seeing what the stresses and pressures of this career path are.
Stress and strain with summer travel weeks away. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
Joining us now for more on this is NBC News aviation analyst Jeff Guzzetti. Jeff, good morning. So, we just heard so many issues there. Radar and radio outages and staffing shortages at Newark, as well as some other issues sprinkled across the country, obviously kind of centered on a couple airports here. But should people be concerned about the overall ability for safe travel that gets you somewhere even remotely on time right now?
Good morning, Savannah. Well, I think that they should be confident in the ability to safely move airplanes, or having the FAA safely move airplanes. However, with the summer season and with some older equipment and a controller staffing shortage, they should expect some delays. Now, 60% of these delays are usually due to weather, but another 20-30% are due to staffing and equipment problems, which is what you saw in Newark yesterday. So I think the FAA will slow down traffic, which will cause delays, but they will make sure that safety is not compromised.
Let's talk about air traffic controllers, because the FAA says it's short about 3,000 of them. So that means it could take years before they're fully staffed. What kind of strain does that put on the system?
Well, Joe, it puts strains on the system because controllers have to work overtime, or they have to try to handle this large volume of summer traffic into their normal working schedule. So it is a problem, but I think the FAA is really doing a good job in what they call supercharging their initiative to get more controllers. They're throwing money at the problem, and you need money to recruit and retain and upgrade and train. And so it is a shortage. I think they're making some good strides against it, but it is going to take a couple of years to get back to full strength.
Jeff, there's this proposal to upgrade the aging air traffic control system. And as we're discussing, we've got this staffing shortage that seems to have persisted. That, although, of course, takes time and money. What does it mean for travelers in the immediate, in the short term, this summer? Expecting more delays?
It depends on the weather, Savannah. So, like I said, weather accounts for 60% of the delays perennially. So we know there's going to be a large volume of passengers, and we know that there's going to be weather. We just don't know how bad that weather is going to be. So I think it'll be kind of like last summer. There's going to be periods of time when there's going to be cancellations and delays, but I think the safety is still being kept maintained.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, talking nonsense. A renewed push on Capitol Hill to phase out the penny.
Up first, though, after the break, countdown to the conclave will take you to the Vatican, where the first sign of the upcoming papal election is now on display. Stay with us.
Welcome back. British comedian and actor Russell Brand was granted bail today after making his first court appearance. About a month ago, British prosecutors charged Brand with several counts, including rape, indecent assault, oral rape, and sexual assaults.
Brand has denied all the allegations against him. The charges stem from alleged incidents involving 4 women, one as young as 16, between 1999 and 2005. He maintains that all of his relationships have been consensual.
NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter is following the case for us. Molly, good morning. So just walk us through what happened during today's hearing.
Yeah, and guys, today is more like an arraignment, they don't call that here in the UK in the same way that we do in the US, but he basically had to show up, which he did, and he was mandated to show up last month when these charges dropped. He had to confirm his name, his addresses, both in the US and the UK, and then he was basically released on what they call conditional bail. Again, it's not like in the US where you actually have to pay a bond to release, but he has to let the court know if he moves, if he travels, if he changes address.
We know he currently spends most of his time in Florida, so just kind of looking at what happens next here, and given the nature of the charges he's facing, is he going back and forth? Is he staying in England? What do we know? We've asked. We don't know. And they didn't specify that in today's hearing. What we do know, Savannah, is that the next date on the clock is May 30th. They've called this a trial preparation hearing, and they moved the court location to a very famous court here called the Old Bailey. Now, as far as going back and forth, he has said previously, we heard that video last month on social media where he said he looks forward to defending himself. So on the layman's perspective, it appears that he certainly wants that day in court. So I'm not sure if he's deemed a flight risk, but he definitely has to let the court know if he moves location
indication at all. But again, that May 30th date, you guys, it's a little bit confusing, is not actually the start of the trial. There will be a couple milestones before we actually see Brand, for example, on the stand, or we see his lawyer arguing for his case.
And Molly, if he is convicted, what kind of penalty could he face?
It really varies over here in the UK. So if convicted of rape, there's actually no statutory minimum sentence for rape. The maximum sentence is life sentencing. But the legal experts that are commenting on this case say that it really varies kind of about the circumstances, what charges specifically. So we'll be watching very closely, guys, of course.
All right, Molly Hunter, appreciate the update. Thank you.
Well, new this morning, a signal of change at the Vatican just days until the conclave is set to elect a new pope.
Our international correspondent, Claudia Labanga, is standing right outside the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, where those key updates are happening. He joins us with those details, plus some other world headlines. Claudia, good morning.
That's right. Hey, Joe Savannah, good morning. Well, you can see it right here. Yeah, there you go. That's the roof of the Sistine Chapel. And this morning, the Vatican Fire Brigade fitted what most likely, or arguably, from next Wednesday will be the most watched chimney in the world. That's connected all the way down to the stoves inside the Sistine Chapel below, where after every end of the round of voting, the ballots on which the cardinals will vote or decide who they think the next pope should be will be burned. And remember, black smoke, nope. White smoke, hope. Let's go now to the international waters off the coast of Malta, where pro-Palestinian activists claim a vessel carrying aid to Gaza was struck by drones and appeared to blame Israel for the attack. The NGO Freedom Flotilla Coalition said it was planning to sail to Gaza to, quote, challenge Israel's illegal siege and blockade there, when their ship, called the Conscience, was attacked on the early hours of Friday. The Maltese government said a fire on board was brought under control and that no one was hurt. The Israeli military said it was looking into reports of the attack. And let's end this tour of the world in Hungary, where hundreds of dachshunds and their owners gathered at Budapest City Park in an attempt to break the record for the country's biggest ever single-breed dog walk. Members of the Hungarian Records Association carefully kept a tally of the number of dogs that have to beat the previous record, which, according to the Guinness World Records, is for the largest dachshund dog walk last September in Regensburg, Germany, where 897 so-called sausage dogs were paraded through the city center. Well, there's a lot of German sausages. Join Savannah.
They're all wieners.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you, Claudia. Appreciate it.
Really got him.
All right. Coming up, pushing for change in healthcare for women.
Sick and tired watching other doctors treating women like they're crazy when they were actually menopausal.
When we come back, the new efforts on Capitol Hill to ensure that women get the care they need. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. Well, more women are speaking up about something that's long been kept quiet or private, menopause. And the conversation is moving beyond social media, with legislation now considered in more than a dozen states. NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Basugian has more on the growing push to improve care and raise awareness.
Menopause and perimenopause isn't just trending online
perimenopause
or on the New York Times bestseller list. It's catching on in state houses as well.
As we go through this menopausal transition.
Just this year, an unprecedented 13 states introduced menopause-related legislation.
If this legislation passes, menopause treatments will be more affordable. That will be guaranteed.
Jennifer Weiss-Wolf is the executive director of the Burnbound Women's Leadership Center at NYU and co-author of the Citizen's Guide to Menopause Advocacy.
Right now, for a lot of women across the country, if they were to go see their doctor for menopause or perimenopausal care, it wouldn't be necessarily covered.
There's no guarantee. It is not uniform from insurance company to insurance company, nor among states.
And the bills go beyond mandatory coverage for treatment. They range from paid leave proposals and public health campaigns to requiring menopause training for healthcare providers.
I got sick and tired watching other doctors treating women like they're crazy when they were actually menopausal.
Dr. Erica Schwartz has been at the forefront of menopause treatment for decades. She and other experts say medical schools are not training providers on how to treat perimenopause or menopause.
OBGYNs are not women's health experts. They are experts in delivery, breasts, hysterectomies.
And because of that, many women have continued to suffer and been misdiagnosed, like Mike Waltz.
I was in my mid to late 40s and started experiencing some symptoms. I was still having a very regular cycle, and even brought this up to my friend group, and they were like, oh, it's too early. You know, you're fine. You're fine.
When she was hospitalized for heart palpitations and high blood pressure, doctors treated her for that instead of the real underlying factor, perimenopause.
My experience with doctors at this point was so, so dismissive.
And Michael's story is not uncommon.
What symptoms could they experience?
Hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, irritability, urinary tract infections, bloating, weight gain, weight loss, depression, anxiety. So before you go to 20 specialists, think hormones and make sure that you've adjusted your lifestyle.
And these symptoms have far-reaching ripple effects. According to the Mayo Clinic, our economy is losing an estimated $1.8 billion annually because menopause symptoms are pushing people to miss work. So with this potential change in legislation, what could this mean for women and our future?
If you're feeling good, then you can contribute. And if you can contribute, our society will benefit.
Now, it's up to lawmakers to push policies through championing changes for women in every state.
Our thanks to Yasmin Vasugian. Really important reporting there. Well, coming up, make it make sense when we come back, why lawmakers are pushing to end the production of The Penny.
Plus, a film marked by tragedy now showing in theaters everywhere. More on the controversial opening of Rust. Next on Morning News.
We are back now with the bipartisan push on Capitol Hill to phase out a piece of American currency that's been in circulation for over 200 years. I think it's obvious at this point lawmakers are now renewing efforts to eliminate the penny, arguing it costs more to make than it's actually worth. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin has more.
It's the coin almost as old as America itself. The first one, by some accounts, designed by founding father Ben Franklin, although he likely never said that famous phrase, a penny saved is a penny earned. But after 238 years in circulation, that's a sentiment that no longer rings true.
I don't think I've used a coin, penny, or let alone any other type of coin in a few years at least.
If I get a penny, I either keep it in my pocket or just throw it somewhere in my house.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers is reviving a push to eliminate penny production at a time of rising inflation. Why do you think people want to get rid of pennies?
Well, I'll tell you, it now costs 4 pennies to make 1 penny. And that, if you want an example of waste, that's it.
It's a move that's been floated by generations of politicians. From then President Obama.
Anytime we're spending more money on something that people don't actually use.
To President Trump.
The penny is gone.
Who in February ordered the Treasury to stop producing new pennies.
In the context of bipartisanship and good stewardship, let's get this done.
The first bill in Congress to eliminate the penny way back in 1989, prompting this NBC News report on its dismal reputation.
When we put a few pennies on the sidewalk, no one bothered to pick them up. Long gone are the days when a penny could buy a jawbreaker, 2 pennies could mail a first-class letter, and 3 pennies buy a newspaper.
The pro-penny lobby, Americans for Common Sense, declined NBC News' request for an interview on this new legislation, but noted eliminating the penny alone will lead to over $200 million in annual losses on nickel production. That's because phasing out the penny means using more nickels, which cost almost 14 cents each to make. Do you think people will miss pennies at all?
Well, there might be a little affection for all of us who grew up sorting them in jars and putting them in little 50-cent wrappers.
So pinch your pennies while you still can.
I just feel like that's kind of an iconic thing to get rid of. Like, I still pick up heads-up pennies sometimes for good luck.
Before they all finally go to heaven.
There'll be pennies from heaven for you.
Julie Sirkin, NBC News.
All right. Speaking of change, let's get to the latest from Wall Street. Apple's earnings ended up topping targets, but its stock is still sliding.
I don't think I've ever heard you just say, all right. CNBC's Savannah now has those numbers and other money news. Hey, Savannah.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Good morning and happy Friday to you. Well,
Look, shares of Apple are under pressure. The company reporting better than expected earnings last night with iPhone sales topping forecasts, but revenue from the key services division that missed estimates. Now, Apple also expects tariffs to add $900 million in costs this quarter. And CEO Tim Cook says it's hard to predict what will happen beyond this quarter. He also tells CNBC a majority of iPhones sold in the U.S. will be sourced from India this quarter and other devices from Vietnam. Shares of Amazon are also falling. Earnings and total revenue, including ad revenue, beating forecasts in the first quarter, but sales from its AWS cloud business were light. Now, Amazon also giving soft guidance for this quarter, citing uncertainty over tariffs, trade policy, and recession worries. Amazon is highly exposed to tariffs, primarily from its retail business. And Microsoft's Xbox is joining PlayStation in hiking the prices of its gaming consoles, controllers, exclusive games, and other accessories due to the impact of U.S. tariffs and those impacting global supply chains. Now, Xbox says it will raise prices in the U.S., in Europe, Australia, and the U.K. The Xbox Series X console will now cost $600. That's a hike of $100. Consoles are expected to be a big driver of growth for the industry this year as Nintendo launches the Switch 2, but tariffs imposed by President Trump on major manufacturing hubs in Japan, China, and Vietnam have fueled a surge in prices, guys. So. Yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
Going to get expensive, especially by Christmas time. Savannah, thank you.
Yeah.
A movie overshadowed by tragedy while filming will open today in theaters. We are talking about Rust. That's the Western starring Alec Baldwin. Back in 2021, an on-set shooting claimed the life of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Despite legal battles and public controversy, the film was finished at the request of Hutchins' family, and now it is dedicated to her memory. But as critics weigh in, the film's director says he wishes he never made it. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin has more.
Some things in this life you can't get back.
The Western drama Rust finally opening to audiences nationwide.
There ain't no going back.
3.5 years after cinematographer Helena Hutchins was accidentally shot and killed on set by star Alec Baldwin, who was rehearsing with a prop gun that was loaded with a live round. The film opening to 115 mostly small theaters across the country and available to purchase on platforms like Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video. In it, Baldwin plays a grizzled Western grandfather who breaks his doomed grandson free from jail before fleeing to Mexico with lawmen on their tail. The critical reception, tepid. Was it good?
It's okay. It's got a lot of tropes. It's a decent Western.
But also mindful of the film's tragic legacy.
What kind of really makes it kind of cool and magical in its own way is the photography and the cinematography and how it's shot and how it looks at the West in Wyoming at that time.
A portion of profits going to Hutchins' family, part of a settlement agreement, according to the production company. Director Joel Souza, who was also shot in the shoulder from the same bullet that killed Helena, returned to finish the film. Now telling The Hollywood Reporter, talk about the butterfly effect. I wish I never wrote the damn movie. Referencing Baldwin, Souza said, we're not friends. We're not enemies. There's no relationship. It's still unclear exactly how live ammo wound up on set. Prosecutors blame the film's novice armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who was responsible for checking and loading weapons.
Sorry. You're okay. Sorry. Just relax. Just relax.
I'm so scared. Gutierrez-Reed was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. She's now serving an 18-month prison sentence.
And I pray that you all find peace.
Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted.
Baldwin emotional in court when a judge threw out his case because prosecutors had failed to disclose critical evidence. But despite its tragic backstory and years of legal battles, critics say the opportunity to see Helena's work makes it a film worth watching.
Even though people might feel guilty kind of watching it, I feel like that gives them, the right to kind of like look at it and see the art she made and the beauty that came out of the tragedy.
Our thanks to Dana Griffin for that report. All right, coming up, a blockbuster weekend. It is shaping up to be a big one for the box office.
From the newest Marvel movie to a psychological thriller and a highly anticipated sequel, there is no shortage of stuff to watch. We'll have your list of everything you can't miss next on Morning News Now.
The nominations are in for Broadway's highest honors, the Tony Awards. 3 musicals, Death Becomes Her, Maybe Happy Ending, and Buena Vista Social Club lead the way with 10 nominations apiece. George Clooney and Nicole Scherzinger got their first nods. Clooney for his Broadway debut in Good Night and Good Luck, and Scherzinger for starring in the revival of Sunset Boulevard.
And speaking of revivals, 2 stars of Gypsy are nominated. Audra McDonald picked up her 11th nomination for her leading role in the show, making McDonald the most Tony-nominated performer ever. Well, that's cool. And Joy Woods, who you may remember Joe spoke to last year, also nominated. We'll find out who our winners are at the 78th Annual Tony Awards, hosted for the first time by Wicked star Cynthia Erivo on June 8th. What are your thoughts?
If there's one thing to keep an eye on, it is lead actress. It's Nicole versus Audra. No one knows who's going to win that one.
Oh, okay.
So
I've heard so much about Nicole.
Exactly.
In Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah,
that I'm like.
Exactly. It would be Nicole's first. It would be Audra's 7th. So
yeah. Also, I've actually seen one of the ones that we mentioned, which
was
Death Becomes Her, which I did love.
There you go.
Oh my God, I thought it was fantastic. All right, well, finally this hour, it is Friday, which means it's time for your can't miss list.
Yeah, the weekly rundown of all the films and shows that you need to see this weekend.
Joining us this week, we've got a very special guest, Fandango correspondent Nikki Novak. We love having you here. Good morning.
Oh my gosh, I like that you call me a special guest.
There you are. I know, I feel like we haven't seen you in a little while, so you got a little special designation. Love your dress. You look fabulous. Okay, we have to start Marvel Universe Thunderbolts. This is a big deal.
This is a very big deal. It is closing out Phase 5 of Marvel. It's the 36th Marvel film. You've got a lot of your favorites back, like Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, David Harbour. But this is not like the Avengers. They're more ragtag. They have a lot to make up for. They've been sort of the baddies of Marvel in the past. The nice thing about this, audiences are loving it. Critics are loving it. It's certified fresh on the tomato meter, verified hot on the popcorn meter at like 95%. So audiences are loving it, which makes me so happy about Marvel. And it's really ramping up because you're going to see a lot of these characters moving forward with the next film, Doomsday, that's bringing back a lot of your favorites. Yes, there was a 5-hour press conference with Robert Downey Jr. So I think people are really amped about this. They feel like the train is starting to really rev up again.
Marvel needed, to get back on track. So,
and it feels like that continuous story. I think that's what people like. It's almost like binge TV, where you can follow the story from movie to movie instead of being its own little thing.
All right. Switching gears here, we've got a summer-themed psychological thriller. It's The Surfer with Nicolas Cage.
This could be
Is there surfing involved here?
Any different than yes. This is dark.
Not Marvel.
This is definitely, even though the Thunderbolts is a little darker than Marvel's used to, this is Nicolas Cage at his thespian finest. This is the kind of stuff that Nicolas Cage fans can rejoice and sit in the theater for a couple hours and watch him do his acting. He plays a guy that's going back to where he grew up in Australia. He's bringing his son, thinking it's going to be idyllic, and the locals don't want him there. But rather than backing off, his ego gets involved, and it just goes down a rabbit hole, and it gets very, very dark. His son is like, palm to the forehead, Dad, let's just get out of here. But yeah, it is not for the faint of heart, but like I said, Nicolas Cage fans will enjoy.
Okay, I do love a Nicolas Cage movie, not gonna lie. Okay, also, I'm fascinated by this next one. This movie, Drop. It was like kind of a sleeper. Now it's streaming, though. You say it's amazing.
It is amazing. It is riveting. It's one of those, you're not going to be checking your phone while you're watching it on Amazon Prime. It's Megan Fahey.
I love
who
her.
we love from The White Lotus. Wasn't she just a breakout?
Yeah, and before that, The Bold Type. My God.
She is incredible. Brandon Sklenar from 1923. By the way, they have so much chemistry in this, but this is about the worst first date you could ever go on in history. They've sort of been chatting online. They meet up. She sort of has a dark past. She's very reluctant to go on a date. They're in this high-rise building, and then she gets these drops on her phone, and she doesn't know where they're coming from, but it is one of those, it could be anybody in the restaurant. You don't know what's going on, but just go on the ride. It's incredible.
We've got less than 2 minutes here. We're going to try and get through a few more things here. The Four Seasons, we've been talking about it all week. You got Tina Fey, Steve Carell, great cast.
Few people you've heard of before, right? So the reason this is called The Four Seasons, it's 3 couples that they're longtime friends. They've been going on vacation for years, but this it takes place over the course of a year. Every 2 episodes is one vacation spot. So you're going on a ski vacation, you're going on a beach vacation. This is truly like the season of like White Lotus started it, going on these virtual vacations with stars that you absolutely love. But in this one, it's kind of fun because Steve Carell breaks up with his longtime wife in the first episode. It's not really a spoiler, but then brings somebody else along in the subsequent vacations. And how does this crew get along with a much younger new person that wants to go out at 8 at night when they all want to go to bed?
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, quickly, another simple favor. A lot of hype about this one.
Yes, another vacation. Go to Capri with Blake Lively, Anna Kendrick, Henry Golding, and Paul Feig is back directing it. The last one came out quite a few years ago, 2018, but was such a breakout hit. They're so good together. You're dressed, by the way, for that. You need to be in this film, but it's over the top.
Thank you.
Pure escapism. It's the two of them. It's, you know, cat and mouse and just lots of twists and turns like the first one had. But yeah, just pure escapism.
And no off-screen drama, so that's good. All right, we got 20
Is that
seconds
true?
here.
I don't know.
Carême got 100 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, so this is a foreign language. You're going to have to watch the screen for this one, French subtitles, but it is about Marie-Antoine Carême, who was called like the first celebrity chef. This is like Bridgerton meets The Bear. So you've got food, you've got the food. It's very, very steamy. It's even steamier than Bridgerton.
Oh, wow.
But it tells the story of this rags to riches chef who then sort of gets involved. It's a real life story in being a spy for the French government.
What? Oh,
yes. Yeah,
Nikki Novak, this is fun from Fandango. We appreciate you coming. Thank you so
Great
much.
to see you both.
Happy watching.
And that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Right now on Morning News Now, degrees and decrees. President Trump speaking at the University of Alabama and firing off fresh criticisms of the courts targeting judges who blocked his ongoing mass deportation efforts. We've got more on that as a major security staff shakeup sends shockwaves throughout Washington. Also this morning, new fears of a turbulent summer travel season, a deluge of equipment and staffing issues, grounding passengers at Newark Airport for hours this week. The sweeping federal overhaul hoping to make the flying to friendly skies a little smoother when you're set to jet. Plus, a fresh look at America's job market after a wild couple weeks on Wall Street. What April's numbers might tell us about the health of our economy and how we can better manage our wallets in the face of all that tariff uncertainty. And speaking of tariff uncertainty, we're looking at how that is impacting an American classic, the Kentucky Derby, before the bugle even sounds tomorrow afternoon.
An interesting collaboration there.
Affecting
Kentucky
everything.
Derby X tariffs. All right, good morning. Happy Friday. We made it to the end of the week. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. We're going to begin this hour with President Trump putting more pressure on Harvard University. Now, the president said his administration will strip the Ivy League school of its tax-exempt status. Writing on Truth Social, Mr. Trump said, quote, "It's what they deserve." Harvard filed a lawsuit against the administration last month after the government froze billions in federal funding.
Well, yesterday, the president also launched new attacks on federal judges for blocking parts of his agenda. He made the criticisms in a commencement address at the University of Alabama last night after a federal judge in Texas blocked his administration from using the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged gang members. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us now on all of this. A busy morning. Hi, Peter. Good morning.
A lot of headlines to watch here for the West Wing of the White House. President Trump got through his first 100 days without any major staff shuffle. But on day 102, Savannah and Joe, he did abruptly announce that Mike Waltz would be leaving his post as national security advisor, the vice president overnight, insisting that Waltz, who the president is now nominated to be UN ambassador, was being promoted. But Waltz, a former congressman and Army Green Beret, was, of course, at the center of that group chat controversy, taking full responsibility but not satisfying all of his critics.
Overnight, President Trump delivering the commencement address at the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Celebrating the graduates and his own agenda.
I think you have a chance to be the greatest generation in the history of our country because we're turning it around and you happen to be available.
On the same day as his first major staff shakeup, removing National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and nominating him to become UN ambassador.
Waltz has been on thin ice after that embarrassing episode where he mistakenly added a reporter to a group chat on the messaging app Signal, where sensitive military plans were discussed. But Waltz was included in a cabinet meeting just on Wednesday, where officials expressed their loyalty to the president.
It's an honor to serve you in this administration, and I think the world is far better, far safer for it.
At that meeting, Waltz was spotted in a Reuters photo on Signal, that same messaging app, communicating with users sharing the names of other Trump officials, including the vice president. The White House saying Signal is an approved app that is loaded onto our government phones. Vice President Vance telling Fox News Waltz was not pushed out.
He's got the trust of both me and the president, but we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador.
The move setting up what's certain to be a bruising Senate confirmation for Waltz, giving Senate Democrats a hearing to focus on that group chat debacle.
I think it would be pretty brutal.
The president announcing Marco Rubio as interim national security advisor, which he'll juggle alongside his responsibilities as Secretary of State and acting head of both USAID and the National Archives. Meanwhile, thousands of anti-Trump demonstrators took part in May Day rallies nationwide, protesting the president's policies.
We did not elect a king, and the dude in the White House thinks he's the king and the master of all.
Well, Peter, even more news here. The president also signed an executive order overnight taking aim at public broadcasters, NPR, PBS. What's the latest?
Yeah, Savannah, you're right. The president ordering an end to federal funding for both of those public news outlets, which the White House accused of biased and partisan news coverage and programming, frankly. Federal funding counts for about 15% of PBS's and roughly 1% of NPR's budgets, the rest largely coming from outside donations. So it likely will not shut either outlet down. But the critics warn that the cuts could largely impact communities that rely on local stations and programming. This move, all but certainly, is going to be challenged in court. It is obviously just the latest chapter in President Trump's clash with the media. We should note that we have reached out to both NPR and PBS and have not received a statement from either. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
This morning, optimism is growing over a potential easing of trade tensions between the U.S. and China. That's after Beijing said it was evaluating an offer from the Trump administration to hold talks on tariffs.
It comes as the last freighter ships from China not impacted by these steep U.S. tariffs is set to arrive. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans has the latest.
This morning, growing pressure on China and the U.S. to lower trade tensions as consumers brace for impact from a new trade war twist overnight. China now saying it's, quote, evaluating negotiations and that senior American officials reached out wanting to start talks. Until now, China had denied President Trump's claims that the two countries were talking.
I hope we're going to make a deal with China. We're talking to China.
But before moving forward, China says the U.S. needs to, quote, take actions in correcting its mistakes and canceling the unilateral tariffs. President Trump has put a steep 145% tariff on Chinese products. In the weeks since, prices have risen on everything from household goods to electronics. And overnight, a new move that could affect the way Americans shop every day, the Trump administration ending a loophole that lets low-cost goods under $800 into the country duty-free. Over 1 billion of these packages came into the U.S. last year, the rule allowing Americans to buy cheap Chinese products from companies like Shein and Temu. In anticipation, those popular stores have already hiked up prices on products like clothing, air conditioners, and more are expected. The White House says the loophole has been exploited by drug dealers and that it's stifled small American businesses who can't compete with Chinese prices.
It's a big scam going on against our country.
It comes as many of the nation's big companies are revealing the impact of tariffs on their business. Apple reporting second quarter earnings with sales slightly beating expectations, but the company's shares fell more than 2% over tariff concerns. Apple CEO Tim Cook weighing in publicly for the first time.
We estimate the impact to add $900 million to our costs.
McDonald's said its sales in the U.S. fell 3.6%, the biggest drop since the pandemic. General Motors also putting a price tag on what tariffs will cost the automaker, warning investors of current tariff exposure of $4 to $5 billion. But one retail giant, Amazon, saying it has not seen shopper demand fall off yet as a result of tariffs. The Trump administration message, stay calm.
We're not going to fix this overnight, but I do think uncertainty will go away.
And our thanks to Christine for that report. President Trump says tariffs are meant to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. We are seeing some examples of that. Toilet paper maker Kimberly-Clark announced it plans to invest $2 billion in Ohio and create 900 new jobs. And auto giant Mercedes says it is investing more to make cars in Alabama.
This morning, there are concerns that recent air travel chaos at Newark Airport could be a sign of trouble ahead this summer. Equipment issues and air controller staffing shortages led to severe delays at the New Jersey airport yesterday, with some arriving flights delayed by, get this, 12 hours or more. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello covers aviation, of course, for us and joins us from Washington with more. Hi, Tom. Good morning.
Hey, Savannah and Joe, good morning to you. Right now at Newark Airport, significant delays yet again. Flights departing to Newark right now delayed at least an hour and a half. That will likely grow through the day. Ground delays in effect. Departures are also affected. The problem here is air traffic control, according to the FAA. The airspace above the airport, in other words, not the tower that controls the runways and, of course, takeoffs and landings, but the airspace above is controlled by controllers in Philadelphia. They've got significant staffing issues, technology breakdowns, and that's leading to a real mess in terms of delays and cancellations. The fear this morning, the problems at Newark Airport this week could suggest a difficult summer travel season at a critical United hub.
We've had to forego nights in hotels in Europe.
Train tickets that can't be replaced.
Wednesday night into Thursday, Newark arrivals were delayed by 12 hours and more. Departures also delayed by hours.
All we know that this is an ATC FAA issue.
This red-eye flight from San Francisco to Newark had to turn back mid-flight. In San Francisco and L.A., long lines with passengers hoping to rebook.
Yeah, this is rough.
The problem? The FAA blames equipment issues, runway construction at Newark, and staffing issues at Philadelphia TRACON, which guides aircraft in and out of the airport.
People get angry, they get annoyed, they get frustrated, and rightfully so. But what I think you're seeing is you're starting to see cracks in the system.
Left, and then this one is 2-8 right.
Okay. The FAA is still short some 3,000 controllers nationwide, hoping to reach full staffing in 3 to 4 years. The FAA is focused on recruiting and retaining controllers, recruiting more military controllers, bonuses for academy grads, those who take less preferred airport assignments, and for veteran controllers who don't leave before mandatory retirement at 56. One controller working Newark airspace tells NBC News radios and radars have gone down this week, saying it's not a safe situation for the flying public and don't fly into Newark, avoid Newark at all costs. The FAA and the Air Traffic Control Union insist air travel is safe.
But we know that staffing is one part of the bigger picture. Our air traffic control system also urgently needs technology upgrades and infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, the Department of Transportation and the president talking about significant investments in upgrading the nation's air traffic control system, some of which is dating back 50 years and more. We expect a major announcement next week from the administration. Already, the Republicans in the House have submitted a $15 billion plan to overhaul ATC, but the president wants to see it all done at once, not piecemeal. We expect the announcement next week on how they're going to start this very expensive and long process. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
Tom, thank you.
After a rain-soaked week for much of the country, more storms are in the forecast this weekend. The Midwest is expecting another round of storms that could bring even more flooding, like what you're seeing here in Oklahoma, where a man had to be rescued from his car. Throughout the region, strong pop-up storms caused problems for drivers as the rain made it nearly impossible to see. This morning, people in Columbus, Ohio, are still cleaning up the debris with more storms on the way. And in Kentucky, forecasters also calling for storms most of Saturday, which could impact track conditions at the Derby. By the way, if it does rain, this would be the first time in more than 5 years that it has rained during the Run for the Roses.
Well, let's get a closer look at what to expect with your weekend in our morning News Now forecast.
Angie Lastman is here. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. I hate to tell you that there is rain in the weekend forecast, but unfortunately, that's the news I'm giving today. We've got still some thunderstorms happening even early this morning across parts of the southern plains. It has been a busy one for folks there for days and days. We've got heavy rain. We've had severe weather, of course, as you just saw. But we're going to start to get much of the east in on this action as the day goes on, and specifically as we get into tomorrow. Here's where we're watching today. Notice these thunderstorms that are stretched essentially from parts of the Appalachians all the way down to the southern plains. We will once again see that risk for strong storms, specifically starting around the middle of the day and going into the afternoon and evening hours. And on top of that, more heavy rain. Of course, the grounds have been quite saturated with the recent rain, so it's not going to take much to see flooding concerns across specifically southern plains here through the next couple of days. Here's the severe risk area. It's stretching from essentially Pennsylvania all the way to Texas. Tornado threat is low. We could see maybe a couple of those, but it's more so the hail and the damaging winds that we're going to look. And essentially across parts of Texas is where we could see those largest hail balls forming. So we'll watch for that here as we get through the day today. And then as we get into tomorrow, the system really starts to be moving at a crawl's pace. And this is going to be a whole lot of moisture just kind of sliding across this region. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see, again, some flooding concerns, possible travel delays, and really just an interruption to any of those outdoor plans across that area. Right now, we've got flood alerts across Oklahoma, parts of Texas as well. Notice the flash flood warnings that are in effect. More rain on the way for folks there, but we've also got some really good rain expected across the Northeast. I say good because it's going to be some high amounts, 4 to 5 inches in some spots, but also we need it across this region. We've got drought conditions ongoing. So as we roll into, of course, the warmest time of the year, it'll be great for us to get some of that additional rainfall for our friends across the Northeast. Temperature-wise, pretty good across the East. 80s in New York, Charlotte, and Tallahassee. Milder for the middle of the country. We keep the kind of cooler than normal temperatures into place here as we get into tomorrow for Chicago, and 80s still on tap for the East Coast. And then we kind of moderate out to these more seasonable highs. New York City ends up into the low 70s Sunday, and then back to the 60s by Monday and Tuesday. And then as we head into our next work week, we essentially are kind of stuck in this pattern. This is going to be something that we see remain unsettled. Here's this weekend, and here's what's going on. This low pressure system kind of hangs out. It gets stuck because of the jet stream. And then that means the next couple of days, guys, specifically into next week, we'll see wet weather lasting across this region. You're going to want to have your umbrella with you. Remember, I said this.
Yeah. Okay.
Can't blame
Always
you.
bad at that. Exactly. Thank you.
All right, today marks the 7th day of mourning for Pope Francis. Ancient Roman tradition actually calls for taking 9 days to observe the death of a pope.
That's right. Meanwhile, preparations are underway for the papal conclave set for Wednesday of next week, where the eligible cardinals will vote for a new pope.
NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson is at the Vatican with the latest. Ann, good morning. So just walk us through the mood there and what's being done to get ready for next week's conclave.
Well, Joe and Savannah, we have signs of progress today. Vatican firefighters installed the chimney on top of the Sistine Chapel, and that chapel is where next week the cardinal electors will vote for the new leader of the Catholic Church. And after they do, the ballots are burned in the stove inside the Sistine Chapel. If we see black smoke coming out of that chimney next week, it means that no pope has been elected. If we see white smoke, it means that someone got 2/3 of all the ballots cast and said yes to being the leader of the Catholic Church. That voting is scheduled to begin Wednesday evening, just after the conclave starts. Joe and Savannah?
And we know this is a secretive process, but we've got a little bit of information just about how they typically work. Tell us what we know about how long it could last once it gets started, things like that.
Well, you know, what's really interesting, Savannah, is this time, because there are so many cardinal electors, we believe about 133 will be there to vote. Typically, it's close. The number is closer to 120. And so how they do it is they each get a blank piece of paper. They write, I elect whoever it is on the ballot, fold that piece of paper. Then they each walk up one by one to the urn in front of the Sistine Chapel. They swear an oath, and then they drop the ballot into the urn. With 133 people, some of whom don't walk very fast, that's going to take a long time. So that's one of the things we'll be watching for. But if things go according to plan, they will do two ballots in the morning and 2 ballots in the evening.
All right, Savannah, time for our favorite question. Who are the front runners?
And my favorite answer, put names on a dartboard and throw a dart. There really is, what's really extraordinary, I think, about this is that, even as we keep getting closer to the start of the conclave, the list of potential future popes remains really long. But let me answer it this way. I think what you're seeing is you're seeing issues coming to the forefront here. There's great concern about the state of Vatican finances. The more traditional conservative Catholics want more clarity in church teachings. And those who are big Francis fans, they want to continue that message of mercy that Francis expressed during the 12 years of his papacy. So I would look at those three issues, and then that's probably why you have about 20 different potential future popes. Maybe we'll be able to narrow that list down somewhat next week.
I wonder if DraftKings is going to get involved in all this. Or
yeah, for real.
Sort of...
Oh, you know they are.
Yeah.
You'll love this. One of the producers here has friends calling, asking who they should bet on for the. They want to get on DraftKings and do this. We are out of control.
God's thrilled. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, as always.
There's more to come on this Friday edition of Morning News Now, including the threat. All that tariff uncertainty is looming over the Kentucky Derby this weekend.
First, after the break, could America's newest city soon belong to Elon Musk and SpaceX? The brewing battle between the billionaire and residents in one small Texas town ahead of a critical vote tomorrow. That's next.
We are back with a story. It might sound like science fiction, but it's very real. Elon Musk's SpaceX launch site in South Texas could soon become its own official city called Starbase.
A vote is set for tomorrow and is expected to pass in large part because the small number of residents eligible to vote include his own employees. But not everyone is on board, especially locals who are concerned about losing access to Boca Chica Beach.
NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra joins us with more on this. Marissa, good morning. So what exactly would it mean for this area to become its own city known as Starbase?
Hey, guys. So I can say that hearing the word Musktown isn't just a play on words, because when you really look at the statistics here, the people who can vote, the people who would be elected, because they're also not just going to vote on whether or not Starbase would officially become a city, they would then have to decide on local leadership. And they're currently running uncontested. So we would have a mayor and 2 commissioners, and they are all SpaceX employees. And so what we're seeing is the majority, the vast majority of the people who can even vote, and therefore the people who would make up this city, are SpaceX employees, or they are related or somehow affiliated to SpaceX. So what this means, if this does go through, which it is expected to, because again, the majority of the people voting are SpaceX employees, is that this would become a Type C municipality. And at its simplest, that would mean that they would then be able to collect taxes. They would have control over the roads, utilities. There would be its own independent fire department, police department. That is at its most simple. But of course, a lot of questions on what that would mean. This would make it easier for SpaceX to, and as Elon Musk has pointed to, it would make it easier for them to develop and grow the business and to grow their space interests. But there's a lot of people who are worried about the blurred lines between private and public and corporate interest, and especially when it comes to the fact that we have a state park around here, guys. We have a park. There's environmentalists that are concerned about if SpaceX will protect the environmentalist concerns and local interests around here, guys.
I mean, how much control would Musk actually have over the city in that area?
So we would have people who are, elected, the mayor and the 2 commissioners, that would not be Elon Musk. By the way, he is able to vote. He hasn't voted yet. But if he's going to vote, that would happen tomorrow. And so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. That would be interesting to see. But he would not himself be the mayor, or he would not take a commissioner position. However, one could argue that given that the vast majority of the city would be made up of SpaceX employees, and the mayor and the commissioners would be SpaceX employees, one could argue that Musk does still have some control, right? Because at the end of the day, he is their boss. So even though we have the mayor and the commissioners, Elon Musk would still be their boss. So I think there's a lot of questions, because this isn't really something that we have seen before, guys, at least in this capacity.
All right, Marissa Parra, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much. We know you'll stay on it.
Coming up, the Kentucky Derby makes its regal return to Churchill Downs this weekend.
It's not without some controversy, though, how President Trump's ongoing tariff push is working its way into all the festivities, even the bourbon this year. That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back. The fastest 2 minutes in sports is nearly here. That's right. The Kentucky Derby returns to the track this weekend as America's longest running sporting event ever.
This year, there's a shadow of uncertainty around Churchill Downs stemming from President Trump's sweeping tariffs. From higher construction costs to supply chain interruptions, there are new questions about what it means for the first jewel of the Triple Crown and how it's affecting Kentucky's economy.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Adrienne Brada. She is at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. Adrienne, good morning. This is such an interesting way to kind of take a look at how these tariffs are impacting things that Americans just enjoy each year. Tell us how it's impacting the Derby.
Yeah, hey there, guys. The tradition still remains. People are showing up in their big hats, their bold colors, but there is this common thread of economic, as you mentioned, uncertainty. And the CEO of Churchill Downs has been talking about it. For example, he says he has seen soft ticket sales at the lower price point. And when you talk about the lower price point, those tickets are selling for $1,000. And that's not all. He's also seen a dip in betting to the tune of $1 million. So listen, no matter how iconic the Kentucky Derby is, it still cannot escape the ripple effect of those tariffs. You're taking a look and seeing consumers deciding, do I want to spend $1,000 for a ticket just to get in, or do I want to save this money for a rainy day because I don't know what the economy is going to look like in the coming months, guys?
So far, not affecting hat sales. Adrienne looking very
You look
sharp
great.
there.
We couldn't see you before. Now we can.
So we know the historic home of the Kentucky Derby. It was preparing for a nearly $1 billion renovation project. It's now on hold because of some of these recent economic concerns. How surprising is that for an event like this?
You know what? Not surprising to some, considering everything that has happened. You know, we've been following the stock market and looking at what's happening in the economy, the change with tariffs. But the pause button has been hit. And if you take a look at it, this renovation, we're not going to go line by line, but the majority of these renovations, we're going to expand the seating. And take a look back at that. If you add more seats, what does that mean? You can sell more tickets, so that would equal more revenue. But the CEO is sharing a little bit more about why he decided to hit pause. Take a listen.
Uncertainty is a theme out there in the American economy, and that's one we pay attention to. So we did pause our $900 million construction project primarily and mostly because we weren't sure what things were going to cost. And whenever you build something, particularly of that magnitude, you got to be very careful on the cost side because you need to get a return on your capital.
And that was Bill Karstanjian. He admits that consumers are hesitant. Listen, everything's going to roll on this year. The demand is high. There's enthusiasm. In fact, he says they're hoping to hit numbers like they did last year, comparable to 150. But however, even though they want to match that goal, he's concerned about what comes next. And that is, even though they had a pretty strong first quarter, but he's planning for the future, guys.
All right, Adrienne, thank you so much.
And with the stage now set for the big race at Churchill Downs, no Kentucky Derby would be complete without that iconic bugle call sending riders to the post. And for the last 30 years, well, that thrilling moment has been provided by the same musician. Jose Zozaya, a reporter from our Kentucky affiliate Wave TV, introduces us to this legendary bugler.
Step into Steve Buttleman's multi-purpose inner sanctum. On one hand, it's a factory for the myriad bracelets and rosaries he makes by hand.
It's really been fun in a way to connect with people because, like, I know one of my bracelets is in South Africa, I believe. People think it's exciting that it's made here in the winner's circle, too, which is kind of cool.
It's also a scrapbook of treasured pictures and memories, autographs of young kids who wish to play alongside the official Kentucky Derby bugler.
And I still have it in the pagoda. I always will. Cody from Cody's Wish, I've got his picture, a flower from the funeral.
And this is a green room, too, before showtime. Steve's uniform is ready. All he needs now is his Pickett Blackburn Herald bugle, made in Lexington.
When you're going outside, The temperature doesn't change on the mouthpiece like it would with the brass or the silver. Even with the gold plating, that's a little warmer, but this is still more consistent.
Consistency and 30 years of this experience under his belt. But even seasoned pros need their routines to stay focused on Derby Day.
When I come out, I mean, it's easy to find something to get distracted. So I usually look like right at the end of actually one of the poles there, right at the end.
About an hour before the big race, Buttleman will step away from the crowded pagoda and take a walk down the turf track.
When I get to the top of the stretch up here, I turn around and I see the twin spires and people in all their regalia and having a great time. Hopefully the sun's out like this, and I just think, gosh, wow, what did I do to get to be the guy? And I just say, thank you, God. Please help me not screw up.
Even when things aren't picture perfect, Steve's charisma and talent shine through. The qualities that helped him earn this job at an audition for the 121st Derby are the same that make him quite the star, even to household names.
I had a family here, probably was going to stick around, because I'm not silly enough to think that I'm the greatest trumpet player that, ever lived or anything. I feel grateful to be a part of every Derby, but the 150th definitely. It'd be nice to be around for 175, but
I think you got that.
We'll see.
Our thanks to Jose Zozaya for that report. And if you do not want to miss the most exciting 2 minutes in sports, you can watch this year's Kentucky Derby tomorrow on NBC and Peacock. Coverage begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern.
Well, coming up, we're getting a fresh look at how America's job market is faring this morning.
After the break, brand new employment numbers from April that could very well shape the Federal Reserve's stance on interest rates as Wall Street and Main Street alike grapple with all that uncertainty over tariffs we've been talking about. We are watching your wallet next. We're back with some breaking economic data.
Yeah, the April jobs report is out, and the U.S. economy added 177,000 jobs during the month. That was more than expected. The unemployment rate held steady at 4.2%.
Here to talk about it, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans and Investopedia's editor-in-chief Caleb Silver. Good morning to both of you. Start with the numbers here. Break it down. How it compares with previous months.
Okay, well, so the average over the past year is something like 152,000. So this is holding in there if you look at 177,000. So the economy still adding jobs here. The unemployment rate still historically pretty low, 4.2%. Earnings decent. People are getting more in their paycheck than they're paying out in higher prices for things. But all of this is kind of a rearview mirror because there's a whole bunch of stuff happening that's likely to tweak these numbers. So top line, we're saying jobs continue to be added, but tariff questions loom.
Caleb, your reaction to this report and also with all that information Christine laid out, what does this mean in the broader context of the economy right now?
Resilience is what I would say, because companies are still adding workers. And if you look across the sectors, Christine will get to it in a second, we're seeing pretty robust hiring in some of those popular places where we've seen hiring, but not a lot of layoffs in some of the areas that you thought might be vulnerable now. I think that's coming probably in the next couple of months, maybe not to the extent that we were worried about. So you still have a very strong labor force participation rate. The number of total unemployed people, 7.2 million at a 4.2% unemployment rate. Pretty good right now. So it's hanging in there. But as Christine said, we're looking backwards. We want to see what happens in the next few months.
Whatever storm is coming, we're in a good position in the job market.
That's good to see. So when we break it down by category, does anything stand out?
Sure. Healthcare is the leading here. Thousands of jobs added in healthcare. We see that almost every single month. We saw jobs added in transportation and warehousing, and we've seen that since the beginning of the year because companies have been rushing in goods pre-tariff. So you've got warehousing jobs where they're stacking this stuff away so that they can weather those tariffs. When I look at federal employment, it fell again, 9,000 federal workers off the rolls. This year, it's about 26,000. The government in this report making the point that if you took a buyout or you're furloughed, you're still counted really as employed. So there could be a bunch of people, actually thousands and thousands of people who aren't working, who have been sort of let go from their federal position, but they're still counted as working.
Yep. Still getting a paycheck.
Caleb, first, your magic trick, please.
Yeah, no, 5 days, 5 hours, and 20 minutes. The Fed is probably not going to cut interest rates, which is going to drive the president crazy because the labor market is strong. Remember, the Fed concentrates on price stability, inflation, and the labor market. 4.2% unemployment, pretty close to full employment. No reason to move interest rates lower right now, but that's coming up next week. It's going to be a very contentious meeting.
Does the picture that is being revealed of the economy make you feel like we could see that happen later in the year?
Potentially, and we're going to have to see if there's more layoffs in these sectors that are going to be vulnerable. That's retail, right? That's going to be some of the media, some of the banking sectors. That's where a lot of the job growth was so robust over the last couple of years. And we have to watch what happens with prices. If we get a big spike in inflation, and we haven't yet, then the Fed's going to have to act.
All these numbers are so rearview mirror looking, and we've been telling you all of these major changes that are happening to the U.S. economy and the global economy. There's no question we're going to start to see all of this stuff in this data, and there'll be some big questions and moves ahead.
When that happens, where will we see it first? Will it be like jobs numbers, or how will we sort of know we're starting to see it change?
So I'm really watching the weekly unemployment benefits, because every week states get new filers for unemployment benefits. We saw those benefits spike this week in New York in particular, but overall. So I'm going to be watching there for people who are starting to file for unemployment benefits, and then just watching in the prices. And I've been watching container traffic because I'm that kind of a nerd. Yes. Container traffic has just plummeted here. And what that means is that companies have just halted their orders. So if you're a small business and you don't have anything to sell, right, you're going to start laying people off because you're not going to be getting ready for back to school, for the fall, autumn season, for Christmas. So you'll be watching the small and medium independent retailers and companies to see how all of this is going to affect them. That's where I'm looking first.
Yeah. Cut to Christine at the port watching all the cargo
that
ships.
does take the cake for one of the nerdiest things I've ever heard.
It's the domino effect of that, right? If the containers are coming empty, then we start to see it impact other areas.
Right, and if we're spending less, you're going to just see less traffic, less containers, less purchasing. That's when you'll see the last. But right now, the economy's holding in there, but we're still looking backwards.
Well, we did see McDonald's say that low-income consumers and middle-income consumers dropped off traffic a lot in the last quarter. So that is telling us something, that people are looking around. They're like, I think I'm going to keep a few more bucks in my pocket for now. And that, again, the ripple effect in the economy.
Takes a lot for people to give up their Big Macs.
It does.
I personally can't, but I could see how you might try.
Caleb, Christine, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. All right, let's stay on your wallet. Airbnb is predicting a not-so-great future of travel demand here in the U.S.
Yeah, CNBC's Savannah now has that and some other dollar sign headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning. Yeah, Airbnb is flagging slowing travel demand in the U.S. as tariffs and trade policies hammer consumer sentiment and sparks worries about the economy. Airbnb says guests are now booking trips closer to the check-in date, signaling the booking windows are growing shorter. Now, the U.S. makes up a vast majority of the company's business here in North America. Uber is teaming up with May Mobility, that's a self-driving tech startup, to deploy thousands of robo-taxis on its platform across a number of cities, starting with Arlington, Texas, later this year. Uber expanded its partnership with Google's Waymo last year and has signed other deals with Chinese self-driving companies to boost its position in that market. May Mobility's robo-taxis will initially operate with safety drivers. Analysts have cautioned developing self-driving systems face significant engineering and regulatory challenges. And China is looking towards what it believes could be sector resistant to tariffs. K-pop. It was announced this week that the group FX will perform in Fuzhou on May 31st. Now, it is the first time an all-Korean music group has held a concert in mainland China since 2016. Now, there has been an unofficial K-pop ban after South Korea deployed a missile defense system that year, which China claims was aimed at holding back its power in the region. K-pop is also tariff-proof. Analysts say entertainment and media aren't subject to these fees, so it's easy to see why China may be open to resuming live shows, guys.
All right. K-pop diplomacy.
Here too. Yeah, thank you, Savannah.
You got it.
All right, this morning we are bringing you a celebration 40 years in the making. Music icon Dolly Parton isn't just a star on stage. Her theme park in Tennessee, Dollywood, is a top destination every year. It brings in millions of tourists while paying tribute to Dolly's hometown in the Great Smoky Mountains. NBC's Kathy Park has more from Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, it's hard to believe, but this all started as a modest roadside destination 40 years ago. Today, the park spans 165 acres. There are dozens of rides and attractions, and people visit from all around the world. And of course, when you come to Dollywood, you have to embrace your inner Dolly.
There you go.
Dollywood is a full-on celebration of Southern spirit.
Oh, wow. This is what it's like to be Dolly.
And of course, the queen of country music, as we saw firsthand. Dolly Parton turned a dream into a reality 40 years ago, thinking, if only I could change the H to a D on the iconic Hollywood sign.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dollywood.
And I wanted to kind of go down memory lane, if that's okay.
Go.
What do you remember from that day?
Oh, this is when we broke ground, and I had on my hard hat, and my hair was just as hard as my hat underneath it.
Tucked away in Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains, more than 3 million guests find their way to the park each year. This property was not far from where a young Dolly grew up.
How many miles from the site of what is to be known as Dollywood were you raised?
About 8 miles on up in the woods.
Dolly officially became co-owner of the park in 1986.
Was being a theme park owner part of the plan?
Well, yes. In fact, I used to think that even in my early days, if I made it big, if I was successful as I was dreaming, I thought, well, I would love to have something wonderful in my home area for my people.
And Dolly has never lost sight of her Appalachian roots.
These are my mountains, and this is my home.
Dollywood has generated $1.8 billion for the local economy, created over 23,000 jobs, and currently employs more than 4,000 locals. Sprinkled with Dolly's signature sparkle and Southern charm.
We love you, Dolly.
Thank you for creating this great place where we're building a lot of family memories.
The dreamer-in-chief knows how to keep the magic alive.
What is the secret to the success of Dollywood?
Well, we have something for everybody.
And Dolly tells us 40 years ago, opening day, she was excited but also a little nervous because she worried no one would show up. But as you can see, it's all worked out for her. And oh, by the way, I got my hands on some delicious cinnamon bread. Yeah, it's excellent. So we'll have to find a way to get this back to 30 Rock. That's unless I eat all of this first. Back to you.
There might not be any left.
Yeah.
Kathy Park, thank you.
Kathy, you look adorable. Oh my gosh. Well, the legend herself, Dolly Parton, was live on the Today Show a little earlier to talk about what it was like to build Dollywood in the town where she grew up, as well as the death of her late husband, Carl, earlier this year. Take a listen.
I just think about you, Dolly. You're such a visionary in so many ways. You're a pioneer. When you, 40 years ago, or probably 40 plus years ago, sat down and said, you know what, I think I'll open my own amusement park. I'm going to do it near my hometown in Tennessee. What did people think? That's crazy. That could never happen.
Well, I guess a lot of people did, and a lot of them, being the accountants and lawyers I had at the time, thought it was a big mistake, and I said, I'm doing it anyway. So needless to say, I did not keep those lawyers and those accountants.
You're laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, and thank goodness, though, it was a dream that did come true, and it's a wonderful place for people to visit from all over the world now, and we do so well, and I'm just so grateful that it's just turned out to be such a joy to everybody, and I enjoy it myself. I love coming up here and being able to get all dressed up and all the different things we do every year, and so I just love being part of it and loving it being a part of me and to have something wonderful for my home folk.
Well, Dolly, I remember being a kid going to Dollywood a couple of times, and what you've done for that town, what you've done for that community, it really is pretty remarkable in terms of the employment, the economic impact, and also just having someplace really cool in the Smoky Mountains that folks can go and enjoy. When you open this thing 40...
Well, that's true.
Go ahead, Dolly, I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you were done. I didn't mean, when we have satellite, it's hard to know the timing. I was just saying, yes, I'm just so grateful, that did all happen. I've been surrounded by wonderful people, as you mentioned earlier when Kathy was talking, that I have, great partners that I'm in business with, the Hershon family, and they've been wonderful partners, and all the people that work here, they've been so very supportive. So we have a lot of great people involved in all this. I can't take all the credit.
Oh, well, you're just such a light, Dolly, and we were so sad to hear about the loss of Carl, your beloved Carl, your husband of more than 58 years. I always love over the years how you talk about him. I mean, you guys were such a partnership. Look at you two cuties. How are you doing? I'm sure you miss him a lot.
Oh, you know what? I get very emotional when people bring it up. But yeah, we were together 60 years. I've loved him since I was 18 years old. And it's a big adjustment, just trying to change patterns and habits. And I'll do fine. And I'm very involved in my work. And that's been the best thing that could have happened to me. But I'll always miss him, of course, and always love him.
I will always love you. That's her song. Coming up, a blockbuster weekend. That's right. It's shaping up to be a big one at the box office.
Yeah, from the newest Marvel movie to a psychological thriller and a highly anticipated sequel, no shortage of stuff to watch. We'll have everything you can't miss next on Morning News Now.
The nominations are in for Broadway's highest honors, the Tony Awards. 3 musicals, Death Becomes Her, Maybe Happy Ending, and Buena Vista Social Club lead the way with 10 nominations apiece. George Clooney and Nicole Scherzinger got their first nods. Clooney for his Broadway debut in Good Night and Good Luck, and Scherzinger for starring in the revival of Sunset Boulevard.
And speaking of revivals, 2 stars of Gypsy are nominated. Audra McDonald picked up her 11th nomination for her leading role in the show, making McDonald the most Tony-nominated performer ever. Well, that's cool. And Joy Woods, who you may remember Joe spoke to last year, also nominated. We'll find out who our winners are at the 78th Annual Tony Awards, hosted for the first time by Wicked star Cynthia Erivo on June 8th. What are your thoughts?
If there's one thing to keep an eye on, it is lead actress. It's Nicole versus Audra. No one knows who's going to win that one.
Oh, okay.
So
I've heard so much about Nicole.
Exactly.
In Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, that I'm like.
Exactly. It would be Nicole's first. It would be Audra's 7th. So
yeah. Also, I've actually seen one of the ones that we mentioned, which was Death Becomes Her, which I did love.
There you go.
Oh, my God. I thought it was fantastic. All right. Well, finally this hour, it is Friday, which means it's time for your can't miss list.
Yeah, the weekly rundown of all the films and shows that you need to see this weekend.
Joining us this week, we've got a very special guest, Fandango correspondent Nikki Novak. We love when you're here. Good morning.
Oh, my gosh. I like that you call me a special guest.
There you are. I know. I haven't seen you in a little while, so you get a little special designation. Love your dress. You look fabulous. Okay, we have to start Marvel Universe Thunderbolts. This is a big deal.
This is a very big deal. It is closing out Phase 5 of Marvel. It's the 36th Marvel film. You've got a lot of your favorites back, like Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, David Harbour. But this is not like the Avengers. They're more ragtag. They have a lot to make up for. They've been sort of the baddies of Marvel in the past. The nice thing about this, audiences are loving it. Critics are loving it. It's certified fresh on the tomato meter, verified hot on the popcorn meter at like 95%. So audiences are loving it, which makes me so happy about Marvel. And it's really ramping up because you're going to see a lot of these characters moving forward with the next film, Doomsday, that's bringing back a lot of your favorites. Yes, there was a 5-hour press conference with Robert Downey Jr. So I think people are really amped about this. They feel like the train is starting to really rev up again.
Marvel needed, to get back on track. So,
and it feels like that continuous story. I think that's what people like. It's almost like binge TV where you can follow the story from movie to movie instead of being its own little thing.
All right. All right. Switching gears here, we've got a summer-themed psychological thriller. It's The Surfer with Nicolas Cage.
This could be
is there
not
surfing involved here?
Any different than, yes, this is dark.
Not Marvel.
This is definitely, even though the Thunderbolts is a little darker than Marvel's used to, this is Nicolas Cage at his thespian finest. This is the kind of stuff that Nicolas Cage fans can rejoice and sit in the theater for a couple hours and watch him do his acting. He plays a guy that's going back to where he grew up in Australia. He's bringing his son, thinking it's going to be idyllic, and the locals don't want him there. But rather than backing off, his ego gets involved, and it just goes down a rabbit hole, and it gets very, very dark. His son is like, you know, palm to the forehead, Dad, let's just get out of here. But yeah, it is not for the faint of heart, but like I said, Nicolas Cage fans will enjoy.
Okay, I do love a Nicolas Cage movie, not gonna lie. Okay, also, I'm fascinated by this next one. This movie, Drop. It was like kind of a sleeper. Now it's streaming, though. You say it's amazing.
It is amazing. It is riveting. It's one of those, you're not going to be checking your phone while you're watching it on Amazon Prime. It's Megan Fahey.
I love her.
Who we love from The White Lotus. Wasn't she just a breakout?
Yeah, and before that, The Bold Type. My God.
She is incredible. Brandon Sklenar from 1923. By the way, they have so much chemistry in this, but this is about the worst first date you could ever go on in history. They've sort of been chatting online. They meet up. She sort of has a dark past. She's very reluctant to go on a date. They're in this high-rise building, and then she gets these drops on her phone, and she doesn't know where they're coming from, but it is one of those, it could be anybody in the restaurant, you don't know what's going on, but just go on the ride. It's incredible.
We've got less than 2 minutes here. We're going to try and get through a few more things here. The Four Seasons, we've been talking about it all week. You got Tina Fey, Steve Carell, great cast.
Few people you've heard of before, right? So the reason this is called The Four Seasons, it's three couples that they're longtime friends. They've been going on vacation for years, but this particular, it takes place over the course of a year. Every 2 episodes is one vacation spot. So you're going on a ski vacation, you're going on a beach vacation. This is truly like the season of like White Lotus started it, going on these virtual vacations with stars that you absolutely love. But in this one, it's kind of fun because Steve Carell breaks up with his longtime wife in the first episode. It's not really a spoiler, but then brings somebody else along in the subsequent vacations. And how does this crew get along with a much younger new person that wants to go out at 8 at night when they all want to go to bed?
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, quickly, another simple favor. A lot of hype about this one.
Yes, another vacation. Go to Capri with Blake Lively, Anna Kendrick, Henry Golding, and Paul Feig is back directing it. The last one came out quite a few years ago, 2018, but was such a breakout hit. They're so good together. You're dressed, by the way, for that. You need to be in this film, but it's over the top. Thank you. Pure escapism. It's the two of them. It's, you know, cat and mouse and just lots of twists and turns like the first one had. But yeah, just pure escapism.
And no off-screen drama, so that's good. All right, we got 20 seconds
true?
here.
I don't know.
Carem got 100 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, so this is a foreign language. You're going to have to watch the screen for this one, French subtitles, but it is about Marie-Antoine Carême, who is called like the first celebrity chef. This is like Bridgerton meets The Bear. So you've got food, you've got the food. It's very, very steamy. It's even steamier than Bridgerton.
Oh, wow.
But
All
it
right.
tells the story of this rags to riches chef who then sort of gets involved. It's a real life story in being a spy for the French government.
What? Oh,
yes. Yeah,
Nikki Novak, this was fun from Fandango. We appreciate you coming. Thank you so
Great
much.
to see you both.
Happy watching.
And that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.